Beneath the sands of Egypt there is a labyrinth, tunnels carved into solid rock. Over 400 meters long, dark, silent, cold, and inside those tunnels there are boxes. 24 granite boxes. Each one weighs 70 tons. The lid alone weighs 30. To give you a sense of what 70 tons means, that's the weight of 10 adult African elephants in a single box. These boxes were cut with precision to fractions of a millimeter. The interior surfaces are polished like mirrors. The angles are perfectly 90 degrees. The lids fit so precisely that you cannot slide even a sheet of paper between the lid and the body of the box. The official explanation? They were sarcophagi for sacred bulls. But there's a massive problem with that explanation. Most of them were empty when found. No bull remains, no bones, absolutely nothing inside. And the technology needed to create these boxes with that precision, it shouldn't have existed in ancient Egypt. It simply shouldn't have. But here's something even more disturbing than the boxes themselves. The Egyptians left a record of who made them. It's in their sacred texts, carved in stone, written on papyrus. And what they wrote completely contradicts everything official history tells us about Egypt. Because before the pharaohs, long before, there were others. Others who ruled this land for more than 13,000 years. Who were these beings? Stay until the end, because the answer will change forever the way you see Egypt. The official history of Egypt begins around 3100 BC with Pharaoh Narmer, the unification, the first dynasties. That's the narrative in every textbook. It's what they taught you in school. But the Egyptians themselves told a completely different story, a story that begins much earlier than Narmer. And we have proof of this in two extraordinary documents that modern archaeologists prefer to treat as myth, even though the Egyptians clearly treated them as history. The first document, the Palermo Stone. It's a fragment of black basalt, part of a larger stele, a monumental stone slab that listed all the kings of Egypt from the very beginning of time. This stone dates from the 5th dynasty of Egypt, around 2400 BC. It's on display today at the Archaeological Museum of Palermo, Italy, hence the name. The stone lists historical pharaohs we know, but before them, it lists something completely different, pre-dynastic rulers. First, the Neteru, the gods, Ta, Ra, Shu, Geb, Osiris, Set, Horus. The stone lists the reigns of these divine beings, each ruling for hundreds or even thousands of years. After the gods comes another group, the Shemsu Hor, followers of Horus. They weren't gods, but they weren't ordinary humans either. They were something in between. The second document, the Turin Papyrus. This one is even more detailed and more disturbing. The Turin Papyrus was written during the reign of Ramesses II, around 1250 BC. It's a complete list of all rulers of Egypt from the creation of the world up to that point. The papyrus is damaged and fragmented, but what survived is extraordinary. It divides Egyptian history into clearly defined eras. First, the age of the gods, the Neteru ruling directly, then the age of the Shemsu Hor. And the Turin Papyrus gives a specific number for the reign of the Shemsu Hor, 13,120 years, 13,420 years, before Narmer. Before the pyramids, before everything we know as Egyptian civilization. Now, I need you to think critically about this for a moment. Egyptian scribes were some of the most meticulous professionals in all of ancient history. They recorded everything with obsessive precision. Grain records, taxes, battles, royal births and deaths, all documented with extraordinary rigor. These same scribes wrote 13,120 years of previous rulers. Why would they invent such a specific number? 13,120 is not a round number. It's not symbolic. It's exactly the kind of number you write down when you're recording real facts. Modern academia says it's myth, it's symbolic. The Egyptians were being poetic, but the Egyptians knew how to distinguish between myth and history. They had different words and different formats for each. The Turin Papyrus is a king list, not a religious text, not an allegory. It's history. At least, that's what the Egyptian scribes believed they were recording. So the question academia avoids asking is, What if they were right? Let's understand who the Shemsu Hor were, because this is crucial for what comes next. The Egyptian texts are clear about one thing. The Shemsu Hor were not the Neteru, the gods. The gods came first. They ruled Egypt directly. Then came the Shemsu Hor as a second layer, intermediaries between the divine and the human. Followers of Horus is the literal translation, but the title carries deeper implications than simply follower. In ancient Egyptian, Shemsu means something closer to companion or guardian. Not a servant is an active guardian of something precious. Guardian of what? Of knowledge. There are three major interpretations of who the Shemsu Hor actually were. The conventional academic interpretation. The Shemsu Hor were the pre-dynastic priestly elite, religious and political leaders who governed Egypt before unification. The 13,420 years are mythical exaggeration. In reality, just a few centuries of tribal leaders. Seems reasonable, except for one detail this explanation can't resolve. Egyptian priests had knowledge that shouldn't have existed in that historical period. Extremely precise astronomy, advanced medicine, architecture that still impresses modern engineers. If the Shemsu Hor were merely tribal leaders spanning a few centuries, where did that knowledge come from? The hybrid interpretation. The Shemsu Hor were descendants of the Neteru, the product of a crossing between the divine and the human, like the Nephilim of the Hebrew tradition, sons of God with human women, as described in the book of Genesis, like the demigods of Greek mythology, Hercules, Achilles, Perseus, with powers beyond human but still mortal. Beings with something different in their blood, with capabilities ordinary humans didn't have, ruling human populations on behalf of a heritage they carried. The survivor's interpretation. This is the one that seems most consistent with the physical evidence. The Shemsu Hor were survivors of an earlier civilization, a civilization that existed before the cataclysm that destroyed the ancient world. A catastrophe we've already explored. The Younger Dryas event, 12,800 years ago. The cosmic impact, the floods, the climatic collapse. If an advanced civilization existed before that catastrophe, and the evidence suggests it did, it was destroyed, almost completely. But survivors escaped, with the knowledge they had, with the skills they've developed. They arrived in Egypt, gradually established governance, taught the natives, and generation after generation, transmitted what they knew, for 13,120 years according to the Egyptian texts. Now, which of these three interpretations best explains what we're about to see with the granite boxes? Let's find out. The Serapeum of Saqqara was rediscovered in 1850. Auguste Mariette, a French archaeologist, was following a clue 1,800 years old. The Greek geographer Strabo had described the site around 24 BC, an avenue of sphinxes leading to a buried temple. Mariette found the avenue, followed it, and found the entrance to the tunnels. What he saw inside impressed him deeply, and also confused him. Enormous tunnels carved into limestone rock, side niches the size of large rooms, and in each niche, a colossal granite box. Mariette, drawing on the Egyptian tradition of the Apis bulls, sacred bulls that were mummified and buried with pharaonic honors, concluded these were the funerary chambers for the bulls. That explanation became canonical. It's what tourist guides say to this day, but the more you examine the evidence, the less the explanation holds up. Problem number one, the boxes were empty. Mariette opened several that were sealed with original cement. Empty. No bull mummies, no bones, no mummification wrappings, no canopic jars that normally accompany Egyptian mummies. One or two boxes had remains, but subsequent analysis strongly suggested those remains were later additions, not original. If these were funerary chambers for sacred bulls, where are the bulls? Problem number two, the inscriptions. Most boxes have no original inscriptions. This is extraordinary for any Egyptian object of ritual importance. The Egyptians covered everything with sacred inscriptions. Some boxes do have hieroglyphs, but specialists noticed something disturbing about them. They are poorly positioned, poorly executed. The style is inconsistent with the quality of the work on the box itself. It's as if someone wrote on something that already existed, as if the inscriptions were late additions to much older objects, additions made by people who didn't quite know what they were inscribing. This raises a possibility that official archaeology resists admitting. The boxes are older than the inscriptions. The dynastic Egyptians didn't create them, they found them, and tried to give them a purpose that made sense within their world. Problem number 3, the technology. This is the most disturbing of all. Engineer and researcher Christopher Dunn spent years analyzing the surfaces of the Serapeum boxes with modern measurement instruments. What he found completely defies conventional explanation. The interior surfaces of the boxes are flat, within tolerances of fractions of a millimeter. For a surface area of that size, 2 meters by 4 meters of depth, that level of flatness is extraordinarily difficult to achieve even with modern machinery. The internal corners are perfectly square. Perfect, not almost perfect, or impressively good for the era. Perfect. And there is evidence of mechanical cutting, saw marks. Marks indicating a tool rotating at high speed, not a hand-struck chisel. To cut granite with that level of precision using a saw, you need diamond-tipped blades or equivalently hard material, or some form of high-energy cutting technology we don't know about. The Egyptians had copper and bronze tools. Copper has a hardness of 3 on the Mohs scale. Granite has a hardness between 6 and 7. You cannot cut granite with copper. It is physically impossible. The copper will wear away before making any significant scratch on the granite. So how were these boxes made? The honest answer is, we don't know. And that is exactly the answer that opens the next question. But the manufacturing precision isn't the only problem. There's the transportation. The granite used in the Serapeum boxes came from Aswan, a city in southern Egypt, on the banks of the Nile. Aswan is 800 kilometers from Saqqara, 500 miles, with boxes weighing 70 tons each. More than 24 known boxes, probably many more not yet discovered. That means someone moved over 1,680 tons of granite, at least 800 kilometers, and then introduced these boxes into underground tunnels with centimeters of clearance. Let's think about the tunnel geometry for a moment. The tunnels of the Serapeum are relatively narrow. At some points, the boxes pass through with less than 30 centimeters of clearance on each side. There's no space for wide ramps, no space for multiple teams working with levers. The physical space simply doesn't allow the methods conventional explanation proposes. And there's more. Some boxes were installed in niches that sit at an angle to the main tunnel. They couldn't be slid in directly. They had to be rotated with precision while being moved. Rotating 70 tons of granite in confined space, without cranes, without heavy machinery, without even the wheel, which the Egyptians didn't use for heavy transport in this period. The official explanation talks of sand ramps, plant fiber ropes, and large numbers of workers. But modern engineers who calculated the logistics have all reached the same conclusion. The proposed methods don't work within the tunnel geometry. You simply don't have the physical space to apply sufficient force with ropes and levers at the necessary points. Something is wrong with the story. Either the methods were different from what we imagine, or there was technology we've lost, or, and this is the possibility that connects everything, there were builders with knowledge the dynastic Egyptians didn't have. The Shemsu Hor didn't disappear when the pharaohs took power. This is a crucial point that most people miss. When the historical dynasty of Egypt began with Narmer around 3100 BC, it didn't erase what existed before. It absorbed it. The Shemsu Hor became the priestly elite of Egypt, the guardians of sacred knowledge, the true holders of power behind the thrones. Egyptian priests were famous in the ancient world for their extraordinary knowledge. When the Greeks visited Egypt, and many of the greatest Greek philosophers went to Egypt deliberately to learn, they were impressed. Pythagoras spent years studying with Egyptian priests. He returned to Greece with mathematical theorems and philosophical concepts that transformed Western thought. Plato visited Egypt. The concept of Atlantis, which he describes in the dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he explicitly says he heard from Egyptian priests who kept records of events that occurred 9,000 years before his era. Herodotus, the father of history, visited Egypt and was amazed by what the priests knew. All of them reported the same thing. Egyptian priests guarded knowledge thousands of years old. Knowledge, they said, came from the Shemsu Hor, and Egyptian temples had an elaborate system of initiation. There were levels. Each level revealed more of the guarded knowledge. Common initiates received external knowledge, the myths, the rituals, the public ceremonies. Advanced initiates received internal knowledge, sacred mathematics, advanced astronomy, understanding of natural forces. And at the top, the mysteries of Osiris, the deepest, oldest, most carefully guarded knowledge. Knowledge, they said, came directly from the original builders, from the Shemsu Hor. Now compare this with what was happening in Sumer on the other side of the world. In Sumer, the texts speak of the Anunnaki, those who from heaven came down, divine beings who established the first cities, taught humans, and then withdrew. But before withdrawing, they left intermediaries, priest kings with special lineage, guardians of divine knowledge. In Egypt, Shemsu Hor. In Sumer, priests of the Anunnaki. The same pattern, different continents, cultures with no known direct contact. How is this possible, unless the source was the same? 12,800 years ago, something terrible happened to Earth. We call it the Younger Dryas event. We've explored this event in detail in another week. One or more cosmic fragments struck Earth. Massive fires swept continents. Temperatures plummeted within decades. Glaciers advanced. Oceans rose more than 100 meters. Entire species went extinct. Human populations were decimated. What existed before was destroyed. Almost completely, but not completely. Survivors escaped, carrying what they could, the knowledge they had, the skills they'd developed, and they went to different parts of the world. In Egypt, they arrived as the Shemsu Hor. In Sumer, they arrived as the instructors of the Anunnaki. In Ireland, they arrived as the Tuatha De Danann, the peoples of the goddess Danu, who according to Irish myths came from islands in the north that sank. In the Americas, they arrived as Viracocha in the Andes, as Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, as light-skinned, bearded figures who taught civilization where before there were only tribes. Different names in cultures that never had contact with each other, but surprisingly similar descriptions. And all of them appear shortly after the Younger Dryas. All of them bring advanced knowledge in what seems like a sudden burst. All of them build impossible monuments, and all of them, eventually, disappear or transform into mythical figures in the traditions they left behind. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the 12,000-year-old monumental complex, is perhaps the most famous example, built by hunter-gatherers, according to conventional explanation. Hunter-gatherers who suddenly, with no apparent transition, knew how to organize thousands of workers, cut 20-ton stones, create animal sculptures with extraordinary detail, and build an elaborate architectural complex, and then deliberately buried it, covered it with earth on purpose, as if they wanted to preserve it or hide it. The Serapeum may be the Egyptian version of the same phenomenon, built by the survivors, the Shemsu Hor, for a purpose we partially understand or don't understand at all, and then found by the dynastic Egyptians, who did what humans always do when they find something they don't comprehend. They gave it a name, a use, an explanation that fit their world, sacred bulls. But the boxes remain, with their impossible precision, with their polished surfaces, with their mystery intact. Anyone can visit them today, can place their hand on the stone, can feel the smoothness that shouldn't exist, and ask, how? Let's return to the question we started with. If the dynastic Egyptians didn't make the granite boxes, who did? And did the Egyptians themselves know the answer? The answer to the second question is yes. They knew. They called them Shemsu Hor, recorded their reigns, wrote their story in the Turin Papyrus, carved the history into the Palermo Stone, 13,420 years of rulers with knowledge the pharaohs didn't have. The pharaohs inherited Egypt from the Shemsu Hor, inherited the temples, the structures, the writing system, the knowledge preserved by the priests, and they inherited the granite boxes without fully knowing what they were originally for. So they did what any civilization does when it inherits something it doesn't completely understand. They gave it a new purpose, sacred bulls, which made sense to them, which made which fit their religious worldview, but the original purpose lost. The knowledge the Shemsu Hor had to build these boxes lost. The technology that allowed moving 70 tons through narrow tunnels lost or hidden. Because in the next episode, I'm going to show you that it may not be completely lost. The pyramids of Giza, the most famous monuments in the world, may still be functioning, may still be doing what they were built to do, not as tombs, as machines. In 2018, scientists published a study confirming that the Great Pyramid concentrates electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers. It functions like an antenna, and no one in conventional archaeology wants to talk about it. Episode 2. The Machines of the Gods. Subscribe so you don't miss it. See you there.